Now I'm happy to invite our respondents to give their words as well. First of them is our center's member Gábor Ambrus, and Gábor, as I said, is a member of our center. He holds also a postdoctoral research position at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas in Rome, where he is the lead researcher in the project Foundational Reflections on Theology and Technology. And Gábor holds his PhD from Systematic Theology at the University in Leuven. So Gábor, the floor is yours. I invite you to give a response.
Dear participants, when first poring over Colby Dickinson's thoughtful and challenging paper, and also grappling with the noble and difficult task of giving an adequate response to it, I couldn't break my bad habit of entangling my mind into all too basic questions. What kind of questions were these? First, I realized that Colby's paper is an intriguing example of that zeitgeist. It is a tractate within the expansive field of political theology, in a historical period when there is not a single thing that seems to elude the spell of the political and escape the truth that even an apolitical attitude is a political stance. And I was wondering whether it is correct to claim that in our age, political philosophy has taken the systemic place of metaphysics as first philosophy. And even theology's first point of reference is political theory rather than metaphysics. The first questions to come up for me drew on this situation. If such a systemic change has occurred, as I believe it has, what has theology gained as a result? And on the whole, how has this change, this reorientation of theology? By asking this, I was, as a matter of fact, aware that there is no clear-cut contrast between political theory and metaphysics, for political theories can easily become metaphysical. Nevertheless, it is true that since the Enlightenment, they have an increasingly anti-metaphysical tendency. And it seemed undeniable that regarding the scope of the authors Colby's paper cites, Ricoeur, Girard, Benjamin, Agamben, Lyotard, Zizek, and many others, this paper is a prominent example of a political theology that is both post-Enlightenment and decidedly anti-metaphysical. Moreover, it also seemed likely that the author and the idea to which this aspect of Colby's paper is most clearly indebted is Walter Benjamin, and his idea of the weak messianic force that would liberate what is forgotten and passed over in silence by the violent, victorious march of what Nietzsche called. Now, however clear Colby's text is about its sources and depths, it made me wonder, and I think this must be a major question on our way to its deeper understanding, what the presuppositions are that it leaves unfolded. So I realized that the text's main theoretical attitude is what can be termed an aversion to any power relations, or, to put more precisely, deep suspicion of the hidden, violent mechanisms of political power. This is a theoretical attitude that Colby shares with Walter Benjamin, and, if I am not mistaken, this attitude and stance can justifiably trace back to Karl Marx's political philosophy. Nevertheless, among the few major differences between Marx and Benjamin, there are at least two that are worth mentioning in the context of Colby's paper. On the one hand, in Benjamin there is a profound criticism of political violence in general, whereas class struggle is both a fact and a desideratum in Marx. And, on the other hand, in contrast to Marx's denunciation of religion as ideology, Benjamin makes an attempt to invoke the theological tradition as an explicit critical force in political philosophy. At the same time, it seems to be Marx's legacy and a foundational presupposition in both Benjamin's work and Colby's paper that political theory is no longer one among many other philosophical disciplines, but a prima philosophia that is a primary orientation in explaining the whole of the world. Accordingly, let me repeat and concretize the question I have already raised above. In an intellectual climate in which even theology comes to be coextensive with the political dimension of the Judeo-Christian tradition, what is the future of its long-time symbiosis with Greek metaphysics? To be more concrete, is it possible to read, for instance, a number of texts by Ricoeur, on which Colby's paper substantially draws, as an experiment with relocating metaphysics within political theory? Furthermore, drawing inspiration from Ricoeur, Tracy, and other authors, Colby's paper makes a stark contrast between analogy and metaphor, metaphysical thought and the operation of language, language and metaphor being the realm of the genuine sublime and also a fertile ground for a critical reading of monumental history. Meditating over this main contention of Colby's paper, I was reminded of the doctrine of analogy as pronounced by the Fourth Council of the Lateran in 1215. The council declared that there is a dissimilitude involved in any analogical proposition about God, a dissimilitude that is greater than the related similitude. Consequently, there is a powerful negativity at work in the medieval doctrine of analogy, and this negativity might be even more radical than the way Colby presents the operation of the metaphor. Quote, the double bind of both being and not being something at the same time. Quote end. I might be wrong, but I had the impression that Colby and the authors he cites, like Ricoeur and Tracy, have an inadequate approach to the doctrine of analogy in terms of a university. If we emphasize similitude within the operation of analogy, diversity, but if we say that there is a more powerful dissimilitude in any similitude, then it's somewhere between equivocity and univocity, but equivocity and dissimilitude is even more powerful than similitude, according to the Fourth Lateran Council. I have this impression that the authors quoted and the way Colby treats the concept of analogy is more it's a kind of univocity and doesn't take into consideration this powerful moment of dissimilitude in the operation of analogy. Moreover, the main starting point of the paper that the identity of political communities is based on memorization and hidden continuation of violent origins in the form of a monumental history made me wonder whether all communal identity is based on violence and the hidden mechanisms of its legitimization under the auspices of an apparent sacred and an apparent sublime in opposition to the genuine sacred and the genuine sublime as grace, critical force, and critical history. Is the genuine only the critical? Isn't there a likewise genuine anthropological need for the genuine sacred as presence and communal identity? Are all genuinely sacred sites supposed to be only a critical force in the Holy Spirit? Then what about the church? Is it a critical force for a critical history or an established community that might be ideologically established and might eventually be based on some monumental history? Is there a possibility that it can be both, that the church can be both? To conclude, I am well aware that these questions and remarks of mine are too disparate and numerous. I hope Colby will feel free to pick any of them and trust that there might be at least one of them that can instigate a